Welcome to episode 412 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here as always, and this week's a great one. Brian Quinn is here. Brian has been the guitarist of Candlebox for the past 10 years. He's also in Octane. He was in the band Fosterchild. We've got a lot of great stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about all that and way more. But that's going to be coming up here just very shortly. But first, I need to let you know who sponsors this podcast. Sunset Tattoo is a tattoo shop located in Midtown Tulsa. Their tattoos are done good and proper. They're state licensed, Native American owned. They've got a female artist on staff full time. If you hit them up ahead of time by message or call, you can set up a time to get in there and talk about what work you're looking to have done. They can help bring your ideas to life. They have tons of photos on their social media where you can check out their work from the past. Facebook and Instagram are both Sunset Tattoo Tulsa. I've personally had work done by Jake over there at Sunset Tattoo, and I'm very happy with it. I know many other people that have as well, and I know that you will be if you hit up Sunset Tattoo as well. So hit them up and tell them you heard about them right here on Thunder Underground. We've also got DEB Concerts, a concert promoter based right here in the Tulsa area. They've been bringing great acts to the downtown Tulsa area for nearly a decade now. Club level, arena level, and they also book the DEB concert stage, the third stage at Rocklahoma every year, and this year is no exception, and that lineup was just released earlier this week. The lineup at Rocklahoma on the DEB concert stage will feature the pre-party on Thursday night that all 3-day ticket holders can go to, and that'll feature Dee Snider, Trickster, and many other bands that haven't been announced yet. The rest of the weekend on the DEB concert stage will feature Mike Tramp from White Lion, Orianthi. Wow, I mean, that's exciting to me. In fact, getting to see her live. We've got One Night Stand, Dime Store Riot, Fist of Rage, tons of other great acts on that to see the entire lineup of Rocklahoma, which includes everything from Bruce Dickinson of the mighty Iron Maiden to Breaking Benjamin. Check out rocklahoma.com. Also hit up debconcerts.com. Hit them up on their socials. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter are all DEB Concerts. And if you talk to them, tell them you heard about them right here, of course. All right, let's just kind of jump into the talk with Brian Quinn. Brian has been the guitarist in Candlebox over the past decade or so, and it was just recently announced, not even that long ago, maybe a month or so ago, that Peter Klett, the original guitarist of Candlebox, was returning. And this is something that, Brian put out a pretty long statement on his social media that was, a better statement in my view than most artists put out. I mean, everybody, whenever, you leave something on good terms, they always have, a good statement, but something about Brian's just, felt more real to me than some of those do, which was very cool. And he talks all about that and all about his time in Candlebox, and, you hear about the obvious stuff, the behind the scenes kind of business part of it and everything in this interview. It's really cool. Great talk with Brian. We talk about, obviously, the Candlebox stuff. We talk about his band, Octane, which is around in the early 2000s and has made a comeback here in the last couple years, and they've got new music coming. In fact, he had sent me over a song, and I believe you can hear it on streaming, they had just put out late last year that's really good. Album's great. The band Fosterchild that Brian was a part of in the early teens, 20 teens, I guess, is that what we're calling them? They put out an album called Independence Day, and I will have to, show my, I wouldn't call it ignorance, just, in this day and age, there's so much stuff out there that some of the stuff slips through the cracks for you, and I just honestly hadn't heard this Fosterchild album, Independence Day, and I checked it out after me and Brian talked, and I absolutely love this thing. So if this is something you haven't heard as well, you definitely need to check it out. Brian, is continually performing in the live area on the acoustic realm. He's got all kinds of stuff going on. We talk about that. If you're listening to this because you're a Candlebox fan, there's a couple other episodes of this podcast that definitely should interest you, which was Kevin Martin has been on here twice. It was first time he was on was episode 186, and then he was on again on episode 332. I believe the 332 episode was while they were out promoting the album Wolves, which Brian was a part of. I mean, both those interviews were during Brian's tenure. And I had the chance to see Candlebox. I've seen him a lot throughout the years, but I think probably 3 times during the period that Brian was in the band. Hey, one of those times was Rocklahoma, which I was just talking about, with our sponsors, DEB Concerts. And another time they played in Tulsa for a headlining gig. I believe it was while they were still doing the 25-year anniversary thing, or the 25 years of the first album, so it would have been around 2018, 2019. And that, great tour. And I know I have a video that I need to, I'm just now thinking of this. I need to look up and see if I can find the video on my phone. During that show, they did a cover of Mother Love Bones. I can't remember if it was Chloe Dancer, Crown of Thorns, or Stargazer. I think it was Chloe Dancer, but I need to look that up. Where it was just Kevin Martin. I believe it was just Kevin Martin and Brian Quinn, if I'm remembering this correctly. Just the acoustic guitar and the vocals. And I am a massive fan of Andrew Wood and Mother Love Bone. So anytime, you get the chance to hear something like that live is always special. On a side tangent, I was fortunate enough to see one of those rare Temple of the Dog shows in 2016. And to see Chris Cornell sing all those Mother Love Bone songs was just an unbelievable experience. Which, kind of plays a little bit into this conversation. We talk a bit about the 90s and the grunge era and all that great stuff. But hey, before we jump into this interview, I want to let you know about a couple other interviews that are coming up very soon that I recently recorded. I just recorded an interview with Chris Voss, who is the vocalist and guitarist of the band The Record Company. The Record Company has made a pretty big name for themselves over the past decade or so. They have this killer stripped down blues rock mixed with, country and Americana and just, the roots of rock and roll all kind of combined into this, really cool sound. So if you haven't heard The Record Company, definitely check them out. They're not as hard rock or whatever as most of the bands that, we tend to talk about here on Thunder Underground. But when I get the chance to talk to someone that, I love their music, I'm going to do it regardless of the genre. If you dig back through the nearly decade of this podcast, most of it will always lean hard rock or metal, but there's, been some exceptions throughout the year. I got the chance to talk to Shooter Jennings. That was pretty early on. That was, a highlight. That's still one of the highlights of this tenure for me. And Vanilla Ice was on here once. So see, it just kind of can span the gamut, which is just something that I've always been proud of with this podcast, especially, when me and Jason started it, and clear to this day. And with that being said, on a completely different note, sound-wise, I also just recently recorded an episode with Ginger Wildheart. I actually recorded it the same day I recorded this one you're listening to right now with Brian Quinn. But Ginger Wildheart, I've been a longtime fan of this guy, dating back to the 90s. Just such a kind of an enigma, just one of those guys that's just so interesting throughout his time. Such a prolific songwriter, musician, just full of attitude, just full of, his music can span from, the darkest, sides of life to, the happiest. And I love that when artists, are all encompassing. So I was really excited to be able to do that one as well. You'll be able to hear both of those coming up shortly. I've got a couple other exciting ones that are scheduled that I'll let you know about once they happen. But in the meantime, we've got quite a bit to talk about with Brian Quinn. So I'm going to stop talking about what I've got going on, and let's jump in and listen to this. Here is Brian Quinn. First off, congratulations on the Eagles. Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah,
I'm
that was a big win for the city. And I'm a football fanatic. I was at all the I missed one home game because we're on tour. So I was at
right.
all the games this year.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a great season, amazing to see.
Yeah.
I got to see that Saquon Barkley reverse hurdle. I was at that game.
Oh no shit.
That's amazing.
Were you watching the field as it happened? You weren't like looking away for
Nope, we were watching it. We can't take your eyes off of him on the field, man, because
Yeah.
he was just carving people up all season.
Yeah. Yeah, I've
No,
been a diehard Broncos fan since I was a kid, so I was super happy to see anyone beat the Chiefs.
yeah.
But also I've been an OU fan since I was a kid, so super happy to see, Jalen Hurts and Lane
Jalen,
Johnson
yeah.
get that ring. So
Yeah, I followed Denver in the AFC. I was a big John Elway fan when I was a kid because I played football in high school and I was a quarterback, and John Elway was like my big big hero of mine
that's
when I
awesome.
was growing up.
Yeah, did you see they're making a documentary? They're Peyton Manning's production company is putting
All right.
together a documentary for Netflix over Elway.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. I'm
Yeah.
glad Peyton's doing it. We have a bunch of mutual friends. I met him a couple times before. He's a good dude.
Nice.
And man, I'll tell you, Bo Nix got. I think it finally get we Denver finally got somebody there that's going to get the job done.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, I
kid's
finally have
good.
some hope.
Yeah, the kid's good. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, they were that close the playoffs this year, so
Yeah.
they'll get there.
Yeah.
Young guys, young team. That's the same thing with the Eagles. That's why everybody's so excited. We got a lot of young guys, especially on that defense, and they just put the Chiefs over their knee and gave
Yeah.
it bagged them.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Jumping into the music stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
The hot news, of course, was that, you recently left Candlebox. And of
Yeah.
course, fans, especially huge fans of a band always love when original members come back. But you've
Yeah.
been there quite a long time, so those fans also become fans of yours. So what has the fan support been like since the announcement was made?
It's been great actually. It was fine. Even like from day one of when I joined the band, when I came in, like Pete left for the second time, and it was, I came in and the support was fantastic, and it was immediate. Well, I was expecting to see a bunch of signs in the audience and nasty grams and shit like that, but it's cool. Yeah, it was fine. And then yeah, especially afterwards, man, it's just they've been like everything was cool and it was supportive. It was amicable. It was just a contractual thing, like Pete was able to come back. Kevin leased the name for 10 years so that like basically what happened with Rat, there was like five
Yeah.
different iterations of Rat, and iterations of Rat, and that Kevin just, was trying to avoid that. So he got to some kind of agreement with those guys, and that's how he was able to kind of put the players in place that he wanted. But he leased the name for 10 years. Really, we didn't really know that. Like, I knew that kind of going in, but it wasn't anything I really paid attention to until I kind of had to start paying attention to it.
So this is something you knew about that kind of end date well before now. This wasn't like a shock a few months ago or something.
No,
Okay.
no, no, no. Because we had talked about it multiple times. Like, technically, we had like grace years because of the pandemic. So
Right.
there was, I got it like another, gosh, almost 5 years out of it because Pete wasn't ready to come back. And then, the pandemic, obviously, we're off for 2 years. And then, so we got those 2 years to be able to tour still. So, Kevin was, I don't know how much of a rush he was in to change things because the band was just firing on all cylinders. We were really enjoying making music together. Again, like with my post, like I didn't even expect to make records with these guys. I thought it was just going to be a touring thing, playing the first album forever. But it went past that and it ended up being a creative outlet and it was fantastic. But yeah, the fan support was, man, that was never even a question there. Everybody was cool. And then just how I operate myself, man, I just, I make sure I'm good to people and just work professionally. I don't touch a drop of alcohol before I play. I'm just, it's my profession and my job, and I be as professional as I can about it. Because that's what leads to
Yeah.
more gigs.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
so
whenever you
yeah,
first were joining, was it presented to you as basically as a touring member? And then the whole, like you said, the writing and recording those three albums came later, and that wasn't even anything you knew about?
yeah,
Okay.
it kind of it came kind of quick after that. It wasn't, I joined in 2015, and then I was in the band a few months, and Kevin's like, "I want to make a record," and I was like, "Okay." I didn't, it's kind of a little bit confusing at that point, but I was like, "Yeah, sure." And we made a record, and then toured that. That was disappearing in airports, and then that did that whole tour in 2016. Yeah, so it was almost out of the gate, but I was really surprised because I honestly did just expect to go out to and play the majority of the first couple records.
I could be, correct me if I'm wrong on my timeline, but I think like not long after you joined was whenever the band did those all original member 25-year anniversary shows in Seattle. Um,
Yeah, yeah, they were doing one a year.
okay. So was that something that you knew about ahead of time? That wasn't something that came up and you thought, oh shit, this is already going to end? Or you already knew you were kind of contracted in past that?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
knew I was going to be in past that. Yeah, they were just they did one a year every year, like right around I think it was right around Christmas time that they do it, like
Okay.
Thanksgiving somewhere in there. So yeah, and it was like they came up on the whatever. Well, I think it was the 25th anniversary of the first record, and then the Lucy record was a couple of years later. So they were doing that, which I totally get, man. I do that with my one of my old bands, who I reunite with in the last couple of years. We've reunited in the winter, and it's been really successful. So, it's nice going and doing that. I don't know about as far as yeah, like we didn't even really discuss all of that until it was time to start discussing it, where it was, you know, I get Kevin's contract with Pete and with Scott. We're getting to that point. Now Scott's not back, but as far as I know,
Right.
I don't deal with any of the day-to-day business of the band.
Right.
But Pete, was able to come back and he wanted to, so he is. That's really the long and short of it. There's no like crazy juicy story to it. It just is what it is.
Right. Not to like get too deep into something like that, because it's just kind of intrigues me. Is it something where he could have come back? Was the contract where he could have come back at any point he wanted, or was it always part of that 10-year kind of lease of the name? He could come back after that, or
Yeah, it had to be
okay.
after that. It
Oh,
had to
okay.
be after like whatever they agreed to. Whatever I think it was 10 years. And like I said, I think Kevin was just trying to avoid having three different versions of the band in the marketplace. It's
Right.
it's confusing. It's confusing enough to have Candlebox a band and then be reuniting with the original members
Right.
every couple of years in the winter. It does obviously make some confusion in the marketplace, but whatever. It was what it was, and people love seeing that. So they were getting the best of both worlds. Plus, the music always kind of transcended the members of that band anyway. You know what I mean? Like, there's been a lot of members of that band.
Yeah.
If you look back, if you wiki it, it's a pretty long list. But I was just glad that I was part of it being uh, almost a second wave of success, like the biggest wave of success that they had since the debut. Because there
Okay.
was a lot of in between. A lot of guys came and went. A lot of drummers, a lot of guitar players. I don't think many bass players, maybe one or two. Adam's been there a long time, but a lot of guitarists and a lot of bass and a lot of drummers. And just the fact when I landed there, it was when things kind of turned around, which I felt really good about and very happy about. And people love those records that I did with the band. So
Yeah.
I couldn't ask for anything more than that.
Right. But going back to the beginning of it, something else in your statement that I didn't know about was the connection from Morgan Rose. Like what? How did that come about? Like how did he attributed to you joining the band? Or
Yeah, so he prior to me taking the job with Candlebox, Kevin had called me for a session. This is how I got the job in Candlebox, really. Kevin had called me to come in and do a recording session. They were at Think Loud Studios in York, Pennsylvania, which I'm a Philly kid. I live in Philly, so York is maybe about an hour and 15 minutes due west of here. So Kevin was in Pennsylvania recording at Live. The band Live owns that studio, or owned it at the time. So Kevin was there recording with a side project that he had called Le Projet, and that
okay.
was with Morgan Rose from Seven Dust was drumming. Our buddy Lenny Serzosi was playing the other guitar. Adam from Candlebox was playing bass. Kevin was singing, and they had called me because they had a track they were working on. They had released, I think, like a 3-song or 4-song EP, maybe, and they were working on another EP because Candlebox really wasn't working a lot, and Seven Dust, which by miracle, I guess, was off the road because they're never off the road, those guys. But so Morgan just wanted to try something different, and Kevin did as well. So he called me to come up and play a solo on a song. So I said, yeah, I grabbed it. I had in fact, it was a Monday night. I had a charity event that I was doing a guest bartending charity event that night. So I went out to, I drove out to York in the morning, went in during the day, did the session with them. I played the solo. They loved it. And I packed up my guitar and I started walking out. And Kevin goes, Where the hell are you going? I go, I got to go back. I have to get back to Philadelphia for a guest bartending gig for a charity event. And he was like, oh, I thought you were going to be able to hang. I was like, no, man, I got to roll. So he said, do you want to play on another song? So I ended up playing on maybe even two more songs just because it went quick. I got in there and like knocked that solo out in about an hour. So I was just, I do a lot of session work. So I'm used to just rolling in the studio, plugging in, getting a feel for what the artist wants me to do. I do it and they say that's great. And I get paid and leave.
Yeah.
So that's usually how it works.
Yeah.
But yeah, he wanted me to hang out, and I didn't even realize that was it. But I had to get back. So I apparently after that session, Morgan was really impressed with my playing, and had I guess said something to Kevin to the effect of, "If you don't get this guy in Candlebox, I'm gonna find a gig for him, like get him involved with something." So Morgan was kind of like the catalyst behind that. We'd kind of like given goosing Kevin into hiring me, but Kevin believed in what I was doing, and we had been friends for years prior to that, but that was the first time we got to work together, like in a creative capacity. And then he was like, yeah, and then he saw me perform with Fosterchild and actually with Fosterchild because we were label mates at the time, so that's
Okay.
why we had known each other for years.
Okay.
Fosterchild was my band right before I had joined Candlebox. We were signed with Warner Brothers. So,
And that
and
was,
that was my band. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That was one of my bands. I had formed that with the drummer from Fuel at the time.
Okay. Not to like go on a complete, tangent here, but I just thought of it while you were talking. I just went to the theater and saw Becoming Led Zeppelin yesterday.
Yeah,
And have you seen this?
I have not yet. No, I
Okay.
want to though.
Right.
I put,
John Paul Jones talks about, when he was, young before Zeppelin formed. There was an area downtown where all the session musicians would go and hang out. And I mean, I've seen this in a couple other documentaries, kind of like day workers would, just to
right.
try to get a job on Monday morning for the week.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
mean, that's just so bizarre to think about these days that like that was even a thing, that session workers just gathering in a street, to try to get a job in music for the week.
yeah, yeah. It's crazy to think about. And I haven't seen that documentary yet, but I mean that it. I mean, Nashville is kind of the modern day version of that. Guys are just playing up and down Broadway in cover bands, but they'll do session work and everybody's kind of waiting to just catch their break. I mean, that's how it happened for Stapleton. He just
Really?
caught his break. Justin Timberlake was in there, heard him sing, and was like, "Oh my God, this guy's outrageous." And there it is.
Yeah.
You never know who's in the audience.
Right.
So, yeah, but that was it. Yeah, like the whole thing, Candlebox, man. It was just a great experience. Like, I was a kid in high school when that record came out. I think I was a junior or senior, and the girl that I was dating at the time turned me on to them, and we went and saw them in concert. I alluded to that in my post on like my release on Facebook, and yeah, me and her went and saw the band. I thought they were amazing, and then I really got into those guys, and Candlebox was like in '94, there wasn't a whole lot of bands doing guitar solos like that. It was still because of the hangover from grunge and the Nirvana thing. It wasn't cool to do guitar solos
Right.
back then for whatever reason. I don't know. I guess they just attributed it to like the glam metal stuff, which I grew up on that stuff too. I thought it was great because that's how I learned how to solo was with all these like virtuosos from the '80s. So when I heard Candlebox and more specifically Peter Klett playing guitar, like then I was subscribing to Guitar World magazine, so they would transcribe You and Far Behind and Change and the big hits. So I always really admired the playing on that record and the just the fact that he was playing guitar solo. I was like, finally, a guy playing solos again, and they're good solos. It wasn't just like just mash of and flurry of notes where it's just shred to shred and like all guitar acrobatics. It was like the guy was Pete's solos were taking you on a journey, which is what a great guitar solo should do. So it always interested me. So yeah, when I landed the gig, I was like, oh, this is cool because now I'm going to learn this stuff. And the way that I learn as a guitarist is I'm meticulous. Like I have even slowed down to record. I watch live recordings. I've listened very intently in headphones and studio speakers, even down to I'll go through tablature and transcriptions and seeing how other guys have played it. But I'm just very thorough with how I do it, like right down to the pick strikes, especially for like the far behind solo. I mean,
Right.
it has to be perfect. So I learned that literally not just note for note, but pick stroke for pick stroke.
Oh, wow.
But I'm meticulous that way. Just I want it to be right.
Did you do that with everything, or was it just specifically on something like Far Behind or like a single where people, have more of this ingrained what it's supposed to be in their mind? Did you put your own flair on anything else, like a deeper cut or anything?
Uh no, I mean, the stuff that I was learning that Pete that I was learning pretty much note for note, like you solo, change solo. Um, the only thing that I stamped a little bit differently is there's a descending triplet run in the solo of change, and every drummer that we've had in the band since I was a member of the band, they all played the fill that's in it differently than how it was recorded. So I kind of had to alter alter how I phrased it with each drummer. So it just kind of morphed into I stayed as close as I could to the record because like I would practice like when I practiced to the record, I would play the I would play our entire set right before we went out on stage and play our set. So every single day I played our show at least twice.
Oh,
So
wow.
I would go, yeah, yeah. So I would play right up to maybe about 15 minutes or 20 minutes before our tech came and got us to bring us to the stage. So I would just be finishing the set and then go out and play the set. And then, so I don't, my hands already know what to do. It's like, it's like a dance routine,
Yeah.
with doing that stuff. So I was so used to playing along the record that I could play right along with the record in time and that exact descending riff and change I would do right to it. But then I would have to switch it up whatever, about 3 songs into the set or 4 songs into the set, depending on where change showed up that night on the set list. So I would have to just listen for where the drummer was starting on the one, and then I would know I would just have to alter that lick a little bit.
Like how quickly when you first started, learning this stuff, really diving into it, like how quickly did like at least the say the singles you mentioned learning in the 90s, like did those come back like really quick, at least the basis of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I always talk about it like anytime I'm learning a solo, especially like something challenging, even stuff that's like a little more shred. There's always like one, I call it like a pivot note or a like yeah, like a pivot note or like a linchpin note that I refer to it as that if once you hit it once you hit that spot in the solo, like the whole front end of it and the whole end of it will just kind of fall into place. There's always like a spot that I find, and it may not necessarily have been written that way, but it's how I interpret it, how my brain like unravels it. So once I find that spot and I get the fingering correct, and I'm like, oh, he's doing this here, and then just get that figured out, then just kind of a guitar solo just does that, and it's like, oh, I got it. I know where he's at now. So yeah, that's kind of how I've always like listen to stuff. But yeah, there's always like just how my brain works. There's like a pivot note that I hear or that I'll execute in a solo, and then the rest of it just kind of getting there is fine, and then it'll like go into like a flurry part. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's on the the E and of a of bar th of a third beat on this, and that's where it comes in. It's like, oh, there we go, and then the whole thing will just unfold itself.
Well, like how long into your tenure was it where or did you say you played the full set ahead of time, like throughout your entire tenure? Is that something you still did up until now, or is that at the
Oh
very
yeah,
beginning?
yep,
Oh, okay.
nope, every day,
So
every
that's
single.
just do you do that with any gig, or is it just Candlebox because you were playing a lot of someone else's music. I know some of it was yours, but
Yeah, I mean, prior to Candlebox, it was bands that were all mine, and
yeah.
really, you know. Oh, well, when I was playing with Greg Allman's son, I mean, I learned meticulous on the Dwayne Allman stuff because I was playing slide, a lot of slide for that. Dwayne Allman's a big influence for me, and Warren Haynes especially. Warren Haynes is I learned from him. I ended up spending some time with him on the road when I was really young, and
Oh wow.
he just was like, yeah, here's what you do with the slide. You do this and you do that, and then you don't do this and don't do that, and then go and listen to what you really like and learn it. You know, so
Yeah.
I did, and then I ended up playing with Greg's oldest son, Michael, for a while. So I learned that stuff really meticulously. And then with my old band Octane, um, we had started out we were writing, we are an original band right off the bat, but we played in the cover circuit in Philadelphia. The cover circuit in Philadelphia is massive. And at the time it was really, really big. So you played covers to make all your money, which financed us being able to go in a studio to record our own stuff. But the stuff that we were writing was so close to the stuff that we were covering that people thought some of our own songs were like at the time Disturbed had just come out and Godsmack had just come out. So people thought that we were covering those guys, but we were just writing in that vein because that's what was hot at the time, and
Yeah.
the band got popular from that. But yeah, I've always, I, I've always spent a lot of time on the guitar, man. It's all I do. It's still all I do. But yeah, always warming up. Like when I was learning the covers because Octane was covering like all 10 minutes of Eulogy by Tool. We would do Master of Puppets note for note, like cover to
Damn.
back. Like we were doing all heavier stuff. It was all like top 40 cover bands in Philadelphia back then at the time. So we wanted to do something different. And the only way that I was like my concession to joining a cover band or what would have been a band being on the cover circuit in Philly was that we were going to write and B, we were going to do heavy music.
Hmm.
So I just wanted to do something heavier and something different. I wasn't Not that there's anything wrong with Summer of '69 and Brown Eyed Girl and American Girl and all these other, all these songs that just are literally in every single band, every top 40 cover band's set, for rock. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be like just white noise in the circuit. I wanted to like carve our own thing, and it worked.
Yeah.
Octane got really popular.
Speaking of that, like one of the things I noticed in your bio was when it listed like artists you had performed with, one of them was Slash of Snake Pit.
Yeah.
So I assume that was based off the time period that it had to been when you were in Octane.
Yes. Yeah.
Was that like a single show or what was like, do you have memories or any stories from that? Like, just curious because Slash has been my favorite musician since I was a kid. So,
Yeah. Yeah, he's way up there for me as well. One of
yeah.
my biggest influences. That was it was just a one-off show. That was it's 5 o'clock summer tour he was on. And Octane, we were kind of being courted by a local radio station here in Philly called 94 WYSP. And they would host like multiple events. Like they did Summer Sanitarium with Metallica. So we played the parking lot warm up with like a Metallica tribute band. Like so Octane was on that. And then like a lot of their radio promotion shows we would do. So that particular one, they were doing a thing called the 94-1 Babe Fest, which was basically like a bikini contest, but it was at the Electric Factory for like 3,000 people. It was like the biggest bikini contest you've ever seen in your life. So they would hire, a big act. And the first year was Slash. The second year, was the second year Kid Rock? No, I think the first year was Kid Rock, second year was Slash, and then the third year was Gene Simmons. So yeah, that second year we did that with Slash. It was awesome, man. Just Adam Day was still teching for Slash at the time. So I had just missed him. I really wanted to meet him. I saw him backstage, and I just didn't like just being who I am. I didn't want to bother him, and I really, really would have loved to have met him and gotten a picture with him. But I did meet his tech, and he walked me through his whole rig. That was like my best memory of that day. Like I was checking out his guitars and all that. That was really cool. That was it. But yeah, I met him years later, but still haven't gotten a picture with him. But I met him a couple times.
That's one thing I actually accomplished back in the 90s. So.
You got a picture with them?
Yeah.
That's nice. That's a good
Yeah.
one.
It was fairly easy because it was at a Slash's Blues Ball show. I don't know if you
Oh,
remember
nice.
that. He
Yeah.
was doing like the blues cover tour basically with
Yeah.
But
Yeah, he did. I think he just did another one, didn't he? Didn't he just finish a tour?
oh yeah, it was
Yeah,
like
he
it
did
was
another
billed
one.
different. It's like where he was doing that serpent something, but it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
a
yeah,
full on blues tour with a bunch of like blues artists with him, like Robert Randolph and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Man, what a great player he is too.
yeah,
Yeah, just go down the guitar rabbit hole, man. I love it.
yeah.
I have my yeah, I do have my Appetite for Destruction album up there, right dead center.
Oh wow,
I, that's
that's
the
awesome.
original pressing from '87. I'd love to get that thing signed up.
Yeah.
And I got I have the two, you can't see them, they're off camera, but I have the two covers of Rolling Stone from '87 and the 25th anniversary of Appetite of
Oh wow.
with GNR on the GNR on the cover of Rolling Stone, their first cover, and then the one that they did for the 25th anniversary. I had actually put together a Guns N' Roses tribute for the 25th anniversary, and we did Appetite cover to cover, and then a few songs off of Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. But they were the only the songs that were had been written for the Appetite sessions.
Oh
So
okay.
it was kind of
Wow.
cool. We did that. It was a lot of fun. Again, another meticulous one where it's like learned everything note for note as note for note as I could.
Was that a thing you did in Philly with like area musicians or like what was that?
Yeah, so the
Sure.
first one, the 25th anniversary was a core band, and I had I think maybe seven or eight different singers
Oh,
came in and
okay.
did it. So it was like singers from all like popular bands in the area came in and each sang a song off of Appetite. My friend Courtney sang, she did Civil War maybe or Don't Cry. Forget what she did. She did something off one of the Illusions. Oh no, Yesterday's. She sang Yesterday's. We did that one. Um, yeah, so we did that, and then we did it one other time in Philly at a club, uh at a smaller club, and it was I hired a guy from a band called Appetite for Destruction. There's two of them. There's an Appetite for Destruction in New York, and there's an Appetite for Destruction from Georgia. And I hired the guy from Georgia, and I mean he looked like Axl Rose, and he sounded like him, and he sang full voice like this. He had it down. Like yeah, but he rolled up in the kilt and everything. It's
Yeah.
awesome. But man, he's like, "Do you mind if I wear the kilt?" I was like, "I don't give a shit what you wear, man, as long as you sing like Axl."
Right.
He came in and he did, man. He sounded great. He killed it.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, going back to what you mentioned that Candlebox opening for Rush show in the 90s.
Mhm.
And I mean,
Yeah.
you've accomplished, a lot, in your career prior to Candlebox, but I assume you've thought about it, but like a lot of times, but do you like look back and think like what that kid would think about the fact that you were like in Candlebox for a decade, you're playing with, Dave Cruzen, who was in Pearl Jam, you're, opening for Alice in Chains, like just all these, huge acts of that era that you're
Yeah.
kind of now a part of the history of. Like what's that like thought process back when you think about that?
Yeah, that's that thought process, man. It's almost too big to think about. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, uh, yeah, it's just crazy because that was all my favorite stuff, and all that music came out my freshman year of high school. Like grunge broke my freshman year. I was 15,
Yeah.
so or 14, whatever it was, and I was like, yeah, I was nuts over that music. I loved it, and still to this day, like Alice in Chains is probably my top three favorite bands ever. It's like Black Sabbath, those guys. I'm a huge Slayer guy. Uh, but I also love the band and Allman Brothers, like all that type stuff. But yeah, just I don't know, wrapping my head around that whole thing. Yeah, it was amazing. You know, I'll tell you, like one of the times it really came, like it kind of hit me right on stage, like center of my chest. Is we every once in a while we would cover Alive by Pearl Jam. Candlebox would cover it, and that's when Cruisin' was in the band. And I just turn around and I'm like, that, I mean, that's it. That's the drum part.
Yeah.
No one's going to get closer to the drum part than this. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I did a live. We did Pearl Jam Alive in my junior year, my junior senior year talent show in my high school. So like it was kind of like a full circle moment.
Yeah.
So I always joked with Cruz, and I was like, I'm just going to give you one. I'm only giving you one. I covered Alive in my high school talent show, and he would crack him up. We'd bullshit about that all the time. We'd always revert back and joke about it. But yeah, it was just a full circle moment, man. It was amazing. And then just being a kid listening to 90s grunge music, yeah, I mean, I certainly never expected to be part of the history of it, especially being, a kid from Pennsylvania. It's
Yeah.
just not, I couldn't even imagine it. And then it just gradually happened. It's not even anything, I just put so many years in with bands and writing, and, it would just grow and grow. And like the success got a little bit bigger with each band that I was putting together until, I ended up in a band that, had achieved success prior, and then just ended up with those guys, and it was great. But yeah, it was an amazing run, man. I don't even know if I've sat down to really process it, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm kind of glad you asked because I'm the type of person I am. I just keep working forward,
Right.
like, I'm going to be doing some writing with Octane. We had released two unreleased. We had recorded songs back in like 2012 prior to me joining Candlebox, and we were going to put out a third record, and it I don't know what happened. It just kind of fizzled out. But I got the job with Michael Hallman was what happened. So like those songs sat on a hard drive until this past no December, and we're like, oh, we're doing a reunion show. So we're like, let's just put them out on the day of the reunion show and see what happens. And the one really got some traction, and the local radio WMMR, who's the big rock station here, it's left. Um, they put it in rotation, and now it's starting to get buzz again. And then they invited us to play the MM barbecue, like the big their big summer festival that they have here in Camden, New Jersey. It's like a big amphitheater, like big shed, 35,000 shed. And I was like, well, that's cool. That only took 20 years for Octane to get a gig like that. But so yeah, we're just gonna write some songs with Octane, and people keep telling me, oh, you're gonna, you guys restarting that band or anything. It's like I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. I want to keep moving forward. That's kind of what I was getting to. I don't want to go backwards in my career. You know what I mean? I want to keep moving forward, but I'm happy to make music with those guys. They're all great people. So we're gonna, make some music and see what happens. Like no expectations. We were all in as kids, like 21, 22 years old. Everybody was all in. We got very, very close to getting our record deal. We did a lot of touring with big bands. But every one of those guys, a few of the guys in the band were like 5 or 6 years older than me at the time. So they were just starting families or had already started families and had some young, babies that they couldn't just get in an RV and go. That's why I had left Octane to start Fosterchild, because I wanted to go on the road. I wanted to play guitar. So I wanted professionally for a living. I was like, well, then you guys stay home. I'm going out. I'm going to go out and try this. So had Fosterchild, got signed, and then Fosterchild was label mates with Candlebox, and then I end up in Candlebox. So, it's just like this weird just a quick succession that like I really haven't even sat to think about it, really. Not
Yeah.
until I do something like this where we actually sit and take a minute to reflect on it. I don't, it's weird. I don't really.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, then can thinking back over your tenure, are there any like specific like live performances or specific shows that jump out to you as being like a highlight of your Candlebox run in the live world?
Yeah, well, the first one was unbelievable. Yeah, the very, very first show I did with Candlebox was sick. That was in July of 2015, because I was rehearsing with them for a little while prior to that tour, and learning all the material that I needed to learn to get out with them. But yeah, it was like July of 2015. I was at LeBurge Casino in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and on a Wednesday, like I still do my solo acoustic dates in the area in Philly, in the like Philly Metro. So I've been playing this one solo acoustic gig every Wednesday for the last 16 years,
Oh
like
wow.
whenever I'm off the road. So I played, and it's a bar. It's like a barbecue joint. Uh, but it's really known for it's a legendary place for music and musicians, especially guys that came out of the Philly area. So I had played there on a Wednesday night, great crowd, but it was like, 75, 100 people. And I played, think that was a Friday night or a Saturday night. Just a couple days later, it was like 10,000 people at the Verge Casino. It may have even been more. It may have been closer to 15 or 18. There was a ton of people there. So they had this and it was outdoors. It was beautiful. So yeah, and that was my first show. And my first show with Dave Cruzen from, founding member of Pearl Jam. It was all pretty overwhelming. I just remember like walking off stage. I was like, I was like,
Yeah.
this weight comes off you. All right, the hardest show is done, but it was also, 20 some odd years of trying to get there, you know?
Yeah.
So that was a big relief. Yeah, and there was like first time in South America. There's been a bunch of cool shows, bunch of first time things. We did a Rock USA in Wisconsin in 2018, maybe 2017, 2018. I can't remember the exact year, but that was with Ozzy, and right when he reunited with Zach. So that was cool, like being on that because I'm a huge Ozzy era Black Sabbath guy and a huge Ozzy solo guy. Like my favorite guitar player ever is Randy Rhoads.
Okay.
So that's what I warm up with every morning. I play Mr. Crowley. I play I don't know. Just I practice a bunch of stuff. My wife is probably sick of hearing me play the solos every morning, but that's how I warm up every morning with coffee. So that
Yeah,
was that
that's
was cool. Yeah, there's a bunch of other ones, man. I mean, I would really have to sit and think. I mean, they're all memorable in their own way. I've had a couple. It's rare I get to spend my birthday at home, so having 20,000 people sing you happy birthday is never shitty. That's kind of cool.
you're right.
You know. So yeah, there's been some memorable stuff with it. It was a great run, man. I really enjoyed it, but I'm happy to be where I'm at now and happy to have had the experience. But I'm like I was ready to move on as well. You know what I mean? I really never spent more than five or 6 years in a band, even when it was my own. So to do 10 years with the band was a lot for me. So now I
Yeah.
could kind of looking forward to going back out. And if I love those guys, man. So like if they need me down the line, something happens, this doesn't work out, however they're doing it, whatever. I mean, whatever they need. Somebody gets sick, I'm happy to go and fill in for those guys. It wasn't any bullshit with what I was saying in that post that Candlebox is a family. Everybody gets along so well. Like we all know each other's brothers and sisters and moms and dads. Like it really is. It was like that. It wasn't just strictly business, which was kind of cool because I kind of had never had that before.
Well, you got three more, studio albums to your name out of that. Like, what was
Yeah.
the writing process on the songs you were involved with the writing? Was it the core band as a group writing together, or was it pieces brought in, or how did that process work?
A lot of it was just we would just sit in a room and be like, all right, who has an idea? And like it was
Yeah.
who had like voice memo ideas on our phone. You know, what I mean, I'm sitting on about 150 song ideas right now on my voice memos, just for my own stuff and for Octane and even there was some old Candlebox stuff. Excuse me. So, yeah, that process was we would sit in like the control room of the studio and be like, "Oh, I got this riff," and someone would bring up a riff, whether it was me or Island or at the time Mike Leslie for Disappearing in Airports or Adam. Adam, our bass player, writes a lot, and he writes a lot of really good stuff as well. So, yeah, we would just come up with an idea. We would check out a riff or like a melody that I would have or whoever would have, and it would just start from there. And we would just all start writing like, let's do this, let's do that, and it was really like almost like stream of consciousness writing, which was another new thing for me because I really used to kind of pour over writing this and writing that. Now I concentrate a little just more on the lyrics. But one big learning experience from Candlebox was to write fast. You know what I mean? Like don't think too much about it. Just get the idea out and then make sure you have good chord changes and everything, and then now we'll get the melodies together and do it. So yeah, that writing process was interesting. It was rapid fire, very rapid fire writing. Like rewrote a ton of songs, and then only some would make the record. You know.
Going forward, you said you got your acoustic gigs, you've got the stuff with Octane this year. Like, is
Mhm.
there anything else that you've already got in mind that you can talk about, or like, what are your plans personally moving forward in the music business?
I'd love to do well in the immediate future. Once I'm going to do the writing with Octane first, but I just want to kind of go away and isolate and just do like an acoustic EP. I would love to do something like along the lines of a Jar of Flies, Allison, like Sap, like there's some electric guitar on it, but it's, more acoustic based just because I do so much acoustic stuff now when I'm off the road. So, and I have song ideas for that stuff and just kind of maybe go, I guess, veer it a little closer to more my blues roots, like the stuff that, like playing slide and acoustic and make it a little swampier, a little more southern. I would love to do that in the immediate future. Yeah, and like I don't know, man. I just kind of I'm enjoying my time off the road, to be honest with you. I'm really happy being home.
Yeah.
So and it's been a long time coming. Being I was vacationing at my house for well over a decade. So
Wow.
yeah, I'm just enjoying being home and just kind of decompressing right now, but yeah, I'll get right back to work. So, just gonna get right back to work now. Right in March, I just spoke to the singer from Octane last night, and we just mapped out a schedule for March so we can sit and write and get some ideas together, and then bring it into the band, and then the whole band will work on that stuff. So that writing process was, a little bit different than Candlebox, but everybody's gonna get their stamp on it and get their writing credits.
Yeah. Is the idea working towards a full album, or are you just doing songs for now and seeing where it goes? Or,
No, we'll probably do a record. I don't.
oh,
I mean, we could release the singles as the singles and just uh, however the music industry is working now, whatever, man. It's
yeah.
like I don't really pay attention to it. I just want to make music and record it and put it out. If it is, something sticks, great. If it doesn't, that's fine. I'm not doing it anymore to like chase down a record deal or get A&R reps out to see the band or do whatever, you know what I mean? I guess I could send it to people, but I just want to write and record, and if we could play it live for some people that'll appreciate it, then so be it.
Right.
There's nothing left to prove at this point, I
Right.
guess. What I'm getting at.
Well, in your acoustic shows, what kind of stuff do you play? I'm assuming like a lot of your Octane and Fosterchild and Candlebox material, or like what else are you doing?
Yes, I'll like a few originals. I don't do a ton of them. I those solo acoustics, it's just all cover stuff that I
Okay.
really enjoy doing. Like a lot of classic rock. So like me and my wife are huge Bob Dylan fans. So I'll do, quite a bit of Bob Dylan. I do the band, Creedence. I will throw in Tom Petty, but I do like my acoustic show is all like deep cuts. So like I'll do Wildflowers by Tom Petty and You Got Lucky and some stuff that like you just won't normally hear. You know, I do Skinner. I'll do like Ballad of Curtis Lowe in there, like solo acoustic. I have a little looper, so I'll record that and then solo over it, play slide over it. So it's a fun show. Uh, I'll just travel around and play dive bars. So I'll go over the place. I was just up in North Jersey a couple nights ago, and I did it up there for at a friend's dive bar, and then out in Ardmore, Oklahoma, I'm gonna go do one out there, and like just yeah, just go and have fun, man. Just have fun playing. But yeah, I'll throw in some originals. I'm picky and choosy with the originals, and then I made the mistake of hiring singers that I can't emulate too easy for
Yeah.
for the original stuff. You know what I mean? I was the writer, so I was like I would hire the singers out and be like, hey man, you're the singer, you sing. I just want to be the guitar player, but I really enjoy the writing end of it too.
When's the Ardmore show?
What was it? The Ardmore show?
You said Ardmore, Oklahoma?
Oh yeah, I haven't scheduled anything.
Oh,
I haven't
okay.
done anything with them yet, but we'll get something on the books. I want to do it in
Okay.
the spring or early summer before it gets sweltering out there.
Yeah. That's where I'm in Oklahoma, so that's why I
Oh,
was curious. Yeah.
right on. Yeah, yeah. I have good
I'm
friends in Oklahoma City as well, so maybe we'll get something up there. I'd like to kind of maybe string something together and like maybe play down Deep Ellum, then do Ardmore, then do something in OKC.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm in Tulsa and I've got a lot of connections here, so if you want to come this way, let
Oh,
me know.
oh yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to come to Tulsa, man. Home of JJ Cale.
Yeah.
Yeah, one
Yeah.
of my
Well,
one of my very favorites. In fact, I open my acoustic show with JJ Cale every time.
oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm a big Cale guy. Yeah.
Well, they've
So yeah,
also got
also
the
yeah, you got the Bob Dylan Museum now,
Bob
right?
Dylan Center. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah, I'd love to check
fantastic.
that
Yeah.
out. Yeah, I'd love to come out and play it. So I would love to come and do a solo acoustic thing out there. Yeah, why not? Go play Tulsa a bunch of times.
Right on, man. All right. Well, I absolutely appreciate you taking the time with me. It's a pleasure talking to you and looking forward to hopefully, seeing one of those acoustic shows in the future.
Yeah, thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll keep up with you, let you know what's happening. I'll send you some I'll shoot you some music. I'll email you the newest Octane single that came out, the one that we recorded a while ago that we just released. So yeah, if you
Okay.
want to check it out, I'll send it over to you. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. There you go. Brian Quinn. A huge thank you to Denise of DMK Publicity for her help setting that one up. And of course, a massive thank you to Brian for taking quite a bit of time out there to talk to me about his time in Candlebox, Fosterchild, Octane, and everything he's got going on now. Like I said up front, if you haven't checked out Fosterchild or Octane, definitely do that. If you're listening to this and you're just I guess a loose fan of Candlebox and you haven't checked out recent material over the past decade, the Long Goodbye, Wolves, Disappearing in Airports, all albums that Brian was a part of, all have great music on them. Candlebox is still an amazing live band. Brian, of course, helped continue that aura throughout the years. If you're a Candlebox fan and you're listening, like I mentioned up front, Kevin Martin's been on the podcast a couple times in the past, episode 186 and episode 332. I know on episode 332, no, actually, I believe it was episode 186. Jason was still doing the podcast with me, and we talked to Kevin in person. And I remember one of the questions we asked was about, we just kind of asked it as a collective whole, not just specifically about Brian, but we said about the members that were currently in the band and, what he felt they brought, to the fold that was different than, the original members and, to that material and all that. And, he had talked about how they brought more, I remember the exact word he used, but I remember it was like a more passion or energetic kind of energy base to it, to the live show especially. So that was, that was cool to hear. Something I probably should have looked back to, to brought up to Brian, but, next time he's on, maybe we can speak about that. Who knows? But again, a huge thank you to Brian for taking that time out there to, look back over his time in Candlebox and everything else he's got going on. If this is your first time listening, I greatly appreciate it. Along with those Kevin Martin episodes, man, there's 411 episodes previous to this that you could check out. And I don't know what to, throw at you here in so many genres throughout the years. Haven't had on a ton, pretty much else from the grunge scene. If you want to throw Candlebox in the grunge category, I don't know. I never really thought of them as a grunge band outside of the fact that they came up in that area and they were from Seattle as well. But, the 90s kind of rock scene, Local H has been on here in the past. A lot of 90s bands that in the metal world that kind of had their heyday in the 90s have had members on here. Typo Negative, Prong, Helmet, White Zombie. Let me think, going back to the classic stuff that a lot of rock fans love. Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Tesla. Who am I forgetting? Deep Purple. Glenn Hughes has been on here. Michael Monroe of Hanoi Rocks has been on here. I've had on some heavy stuff. Brian in that episode mentioned Slayer, and he likes, a lot of heavier stuff as well. Haven't had on anyone from Slayer, but I've had on members of Megadeth, Testament, Death Angel, Toxic Holocaust, Battlecross, Creator, The Black Dahlia Murder. I've had on, more mainstream stuff. Members of Three Doors Down, Hellstorm, Shinedown, Breaking Benjamin, Saliva. It's all over the place, my friends. Dig back through there. TheThunderUnderground.com. You can listen right there. You can listen most places podcasts are heard. Wherever you're listening, hit like, subscribe, or whatever it is so you don't miss those future episodes. Anytime you see an episode or anything, if you just hit that little heart or the like button or whatever platform you're listening on, if you can like it or share it or comment, that always helps greatly. Another thing that greatly helps is if you're on Spotify or whatever platform you're on, if you just click the 5-star review, that helps immensely as well. It helps get the podcast seen by more people, and that's an easy, quick, free way that you can help out this podcast or any podcast that you're a fan of. All right, I'm going to quit rambling. Once again, a massive thank you to DEB Concerts, Sunset Tattoo, and Brian Quinn. And until next time.
Thunder Underground, y'all.